All right, guys, when it comes to what's going on in politics today, even though we're waiting to see what they're going to do with the infrastructure bill, but while we're waiting on that, we spoke about a very important proposal that's been put forth. And that proposal is the Fair Cost of Living Adjustment for Seniors of 2021. We're going to talk about what that's all about in detail because it's one of the most important proposals for those that are on Social Security that has been presented this year here on Mostly Money, where you're going to get all facts, no fake, no phony, and no fluffed up information when it comes to what's taking place in politics today. And if you're interested in getting this information on a daily basis, well, you made it to the right channel. All you need to do for yourself now is subscribe. Click that bell notification so you get the latest and greatest information coming from Mostly Money. We're going to always be here for you and your loved ones. Let's get started. When it comes to the cost of living increase, most of the individuals that are on SSI, SSDI, Social Security, retirees, survivors, as well as disability are excited about cost of living increase for 2022. Now, we already know how they're calculating is based off the numbers that they receive from July, August, and September. Every year, they take those 3 months, calculate them, and that's how they come up with the cost of living increase. In 2021, well, all you received was 1.3% increase. That was little next to nothing for many of you, especially with the rate of inflation coming right behind it being larger than that. Now, when it comes to the rate of inflation, the same thing might be taking place. The rate of inflation is at 5.4% right now and rising, meaning that right now, if you did a cost of living increase and it was January and you were receiving your first payment, all you technically be receiving is a 0.8% increase. And why is that? Because of how they're calculating the cost of living adjustment.
So prior to 1975, the Social Security cost of living adjustments were all set by Congress. Those were just a little spotty, to say the least. For the first decade, there were no increases to benefits. Then in 1950, benefits increased by 77%. And in 1952, they went up an additional 12.5%. And in 1954, another 13%. After that, though, things slowed down and benefits were only increased 8 times all the way up until 1975. This was when a new law took effect that mandated how Social Security would use inflation data to determine whether benefits would be increased or not. Specifically, they use a measurement called the CPIW, which is the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Now, the differences between the regular CPI, the CPIU, and the CPIW aren't really that important for this conversation. You should just know that it's the CPIW that's used. This measurement is released on a monthly basis by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And data for the prior month is typically released by the 14th or the midpoint of the following month. But they do not use data for the entire year to make this determination. They only use the data from July, August, and September's readings, and then they compare that to the prior July, August, and September. So for example, if you look at the readings from 2017 in July, August, and September, add those up and then divide by 3, you have the average for 2017. Then you simply do the same for 2018 and compare the percentage difference between the two averages. That's the amount of the cost of living adjustments that will be reflected in the coming January's benefit amount. So there's been some discussion lately about changing the calculation method using a chained CPI and some other suggestions, but for now, this is what we have. And if you follow this formula, you'll be able to calculate the Social Security cost of living adjustment for yourself.
Now remember, as he just stated, the way that they are currently calculating your cost of living adjustment or your increase that you receive every year is based off of what's called the Consumer Price Index for urban workers and clerical workers. In other words, individuals that are in the workforce dictate for those that are no longer in the workforce, and the calculations are skewed. In other words, you're getting an unfair amount being calculated or percentage calculated for the increase of your cost of living based off of the fact that the numbers only benefit those that are already working, that can get bonuses, that can get increase, that can get a second job, or they could just move into entrepreneurship. Right now, you're not in that position. Even though many seniors still do work and are on Social Security, it is not to the point where you would get a favorable cost of living adjustment.
Right now, there's a little over $2 trillion in the trust fund, And this year is the first year that we'll start having to draw from that trust fund. So over a number of years, that trust fund is going to be left with nothing. The trust fund that pays the interest and principal if needed to pay Social Security benefits will be depleted by 2033. Even after the trust fund goes away, it's estimated from the latest report that people would still receive 76% of benefits. So it's not like Social Security goes away. The reasons the fund has been depleted faster is because we basically hit a recession. And this happens every time we hit a recession. People lose jobs. So the actual amount of money coming out of the payroll wages has gone down significantly. Some people decided to retire early, so they started getting their benefits early. And then also interest rate. The Social Security Trust Fund is invested in U.S. Treasuries, and U.S. Treasuries are paying next to nothing right now in interest. So the Social Security Trust Fund isn't making a lot of money to be able to pay the Social Security benefits that were expected. Social Security benefits are increased for inflation every year. And so when inflation is low, like it has been, the last 10, 15 years pretty much, the amount you see that Social Security check go up is just a little bit. This year, because inflation has reared its ugly head because of supply chain issues from COVID, we are going to see a significant increase in the inflation amount adjustment that people are going to get starting next year. And that's a good thing because the people who rely on Social Security, that's their only paycheck. So a lot of people claim early at 62 because they want to make sure they get their money before it runs out. But that really isn't going to happen. Don't take into account whether the government is going to run out of money, because it can't run out of money. The Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted by 2033, but we'll still have payroll taxes coming in to provide benefits. The Social Security has been a fight throughout its inception in 1935. We had people living in poverty back then, and Social Security did a fantastic job of lifting people out of poverty. There's no reason for Social Security not to exist as long as this country exists.
So what's taking place right now to give you a fair opportunity? That's where the Fair Cost of Living for Seniors of 2021 Act comes in. This was presented by the House of Representatives just recently to make sure that the calculations are changed and no longer unfair for those that are on SSI, SSDI, disability, survivors, and retirees. Anybody on Social Security will not be impacted by it, as well as the VAs will no longer be impacted by workers if you're not a worker. What they want to do now is change the calculations in which they will calculate by way of the Consumer Price Index for elderly consumers. In other words, they will look at how much individuals that are in your group pay for medical, pay for housing, pay for utilities, pay for gasoline or food. They will rate the amount based off of what you guys are spending and how expensive things are becoming for you, and not based off of those that are still working and can make more money if they choose to. For example, the cost of living increase over the last 20 years has been about 2.9%. If it had been calculated correctly under what the House of Representatives want to present, you guys would have been looking at everything from 3.1 all the way up to 3.5% on average increase. Those years that were just a zero increase, you would have received something other than just a zero all those years. The 1.3 that you received this year would have been 2.5 to 3% if it had been calculated under this new Fair Cost of Living Act. And the final example that I like to use is, even though many are excited about the 2022 cost of living adjustment, you would have been looking at a 6.5 to 6.7% increase if they had calculated under the Consumer Price Index for elderly consumers. So bottom line, the House of Representatives realize that changes need to be made when it comes to getting monies out to you that are on Social Security. And this is one of the few bills that has an excellent chance to being passed in the House as well as the Senate and going to the president's desk to be signed. The other bill that has a great chance this go around is the bill that's presented by Gwendolyn Moore, which is the Social Security Enhancement and Protection Act. And remember, in her bill, she wants the least of you to make whatever the poverty line is, and that means that you on average will be bringing in $12,880 a year, or in other words, $1,073 a month. So this bill also has an excellent chance as well. I hope this information is helpful while we're all being patient to see what they're going to do with this next round of stimulus as well as the infrastructure bills. Well, my name is Andre of Mostly Money, and I'm here to give you all facts. No fake, no phony, and no fluffed up information when it comes to this next round of stimulus negotiations and what's going on in politics today.